Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. And if you'd like to hear what's going on, clearly, please put your headphones on. Otherwise, you can completely tune out as well. It's your choice. So good morning, and thank you for taking whatever little time, energy, and attention you have at the tail end of COP, and sending you more energy and good vibes to see through the next 2 days as well. I'm Nitin Sukh, and I'm the investment lead of Resilient Landscapes Luxembourg. This is a joint initiative of the Grand Duchy of Luxembourg and CIFOR-ICRAF. And we would like to start by thanking the EIB and Benelux Pavilion for hosting us today. Science is essential for implementing evidence-based, high-quality investments in nature-based solutions. It drives the design of financial instruments that tackle global challenges with concrete evidence and measurable solutions. Are you able to hear me? Anyone? Can you hear clearly? Right at the top. Yeah, okay. Despite progress, there's a pressing need to strengthen the dialogue between science and business for impactful synergies in the space of nature-based solutions. Resilient Landscapes Luxembourg bridges this gap by connecting science with high-impact NBS investments and opportunities. Resilient Landscapes Luxembourg aligns with Luxembourg's international commitments, including its climate finance strategy, environmental strategy, Paris Agreement goals, and biodiversity frameworks. The initiative synergistically addresses climate change and biodiversity loss, generating significant environmental and social benefits through the projects that it incubates. It is backed by CIFOR-ICRAF's 70 years of expertise and operations across 60 countries in the global south. Resilient Landscapes Luxembourg blends science with private sector innovation, which is just what's required in nature-based solutions development today. Our session highlights our first incubation cycle, showcasing business case proofs and the environmental and social benefits of nature-based solutions. The session also emphasizes the need for private sector investments in high-quality NBS projects and how science-backed success stories can inspire replication and adoption. Through this event, we aim to foster partnerships, catalyze investment, and elevate the dialogue between science and business to thrive nature-based solutions impact globally. It's our great honor to call His Excellency Serge Wilmes. He's the Minister for Environment, Climate and Biodiversity of the Government of Luxembourg. Your Excellency, could you please open the session for us today? Thank you.
Hello, everybody. You hearing me? That's perfect. Okay, so it's my great pleasure to be here at the COP29. It's the second COP I'm attending. First one was last year when we were sworn into office. Now 1 year ago, I had also the pleasure to attend the COP16 in Cali 3 weeks ago. I think you already wrapped it up and you summarized, did a good introduction to this topic, so I don't have to repeat it. But Luxembourgish government is committed to close that finance gap because a lot of money is needed if we want to tackle climate change, but also biodiversity loss. And for Luxembourg's government, it's very important to stress that we have to find back the Rio spirit, so that these three COPs, they are interlinked. They were launched and founded in Rio in 1902, and we have to find this spirit back because everything is interlinked. So if you do something to tackle climate change, we're also tackling biodiversity loss, and we're also tackling land use, land degradation. And we want really to focus on these synergies because we need to use public money wisely also, and to really use it as synergy, and then to leverage private fundings and private money. And I'm very proud also that we have this partnership and a lot of initiatives, and this is one with CIFOR-ICRAF and the Resilient Landscape to get bankable, financially viable projects with a high impact in nature-based solution projects. And I think that this is really an outstanding example. We're talking a lot of money also here, and it's all about also the money. It's about the mitigation, adaptation, loss and damage, but it's also about the money because we need the fundings to implement all these projects. And this is good, even if it's a small initiative, but still it is one that shows that it's possible to get science and private sector on the same board, and that government is the one that is facilitating with public money. And we want to continue on that track. And that's why we're also eager to present to you today the first projects that are under development in this initiative, the Resilient Landscape Luxembourg. But I think it's could be also like a showcase for the whole COP that we need to bring on board more private money, and how it's possible to do it with the help of public money, and also with multilateral banks like the European Investment Bank, where we also have initiatives and projects together with them, and we're very proud of it. That's the best way to show how it is possible to get these challenges, also to tackle these challenges, and that we need, how we find the money that we need to achieve our goals. So I'm very proud. We will continue. Luxembourgish government now decided that we will have another 100 million euros additional to the 220 million that we had over the last 5 years in international finance. Climate finance, we will have an additional 100 million, so that overall for the next 5 years we will have 320 million euros that we will invest in initiatives like this, but other ones, so to get even more, that our impact is going to be even bigger. So that's what I want to say. We are fully committed. You can count on Luxembourg and on this kind of initiatives, and I'm happy to be here and to launch this event. Thank you.
Your Excellency, Minister, thank you so much for the energy and support for what we're trying to accomplish at Resilient Landscapes Luxembourg. I think it was really visionary for Luxembourg to see that there was such a significant gap in the early stage of nature-based solutions development. You really do need government grants and that level of support for developing projects, for bringing them up to a level where the private sector can come in, where private investors can look at an opportunity and say, okay, now I can deploy capital from my side. So this is a really visionary step, I think, from the government of Luxembourg, and however small it may be, I think it's going to launch into something much, much larger down the line. We're only a couple of months away from the first couple of deals getting done for the projects that we have in our incubator. So thank you and your government very, very much. We follow this up with a message from the CEO of CIFOR-ICRAF, from Dr. Éliane Ubalijoro, who unfortunately could not be with us, but she has sent a recorded message for all. Please cue the video. Yep.
Nature-based solutions are crucial, not only because they can deliver up to 1/3 of the reductions needed in greenhouse gas emissions by 2030, but also because they have benefits that go beyond climate action. Notably, they strengthen the resilience of local communities and conserve biodiversity. To achieve this, investments in nature-based solutions need to triple by 2030. Fortunately, the world has already made significant progress in financing nature. Private finance increased 11-fold in 4 years, from $9.4 billion to over $102 billion. But despite this progress, more needs to be done. We know that the need for bankable nature-based solutions projects is slowing down the rollout of private investments. And as we also know, investments which are not evidence or science-backed don't guarantee reaching impact targets and results. This is why science has such a key role to play. Science offers a pool of project opportunities. It de-risks and enhances impact and results. Science is also a key ingredient in ensuring the implementation of Target 19 to mobilize $200 billion per year for biodiversity from all sources, including $30 billion through international finance, specifically with evidence-based quality investments in nature-based solutions. At CIFOR-ICRAF, we recognize that access to the best possible science is essential. We need it to develop robust business models and to make sure risk is managed within parameters which investors understand and accept. As an international reference in landscape science, CIFOR-ICRAF has both the duty and the track record of influencing the investment of private funds. This organization has been using its cutting-edge research to advise public policies and multilateral aid programs throughout its history. However, linkages between science and business do not happen spontaneously. That's why CIFOR-ICRAF created a dedicated arm of the organization to connect the science of CIFOR-ICRAF to the private sector. This is Resilient Landscapes, and today we are delighted to present the Resilient Landscapes Luxembourg initiative. It was established by Luxembourg's Ministry of Environment, Climate and Biodiversity and CIFOR-ICRAF to accelerate the scaling up of investments in sustainable landscapes. So that Resilient Landscapes Luxembourg aims, in conjunction with private sector partners, to identify and develop financially valuable projects with significant biodiversity and climate co-benefits, some of which we will have the pleasure to hear about today. It is dedicated to unlocking the untapped source of investments born out of scientific research. The collaboration builds alliances among corporates, investors, governments, and farmers, emphasizing the climate biodiversity nexus and the sustainable development goals. The Resilient Landscapes Luxembourg Incubator emphasizes the importance of strengthening biodiversity to de-risk landscape investments. This ensures that real values to biodiversity are ascribed as an appreciating asset. Leveraging ICRAF and CIFOR's nearly 50 years of expertise in forestry, agroforestry, and biodiversity, and extensive partnership networks across Africa, Asia, and Latin America, Resilient Landscapes Luxembourg focuses on incubating projects that either emerge from the CIFOR-ICRAF research portfolio or that come externally and can benefit from our science. Given the international recognition of Luxembourg's dynamic impact on the finance sector and the early adoption of sustainable standards for this industry, Luxembourg, together with CIFOR-ICRAF, is uniquely positioned to drive quality standards in large-scale, long-term, nature-based solutions investments. Exciting opportunities and an enabling environment make Resilient Landscapes Luxembourg timely and relevant. Amid the unprecedented global attention to nature-based solutions, we see companies demonstrating genuine interest in reducing their carbon footprint and addressing supply chain challenges. Resilient Landscapes Luxembourg is dedicated to addressing the increased demand for evidence-based investable projects focused on impact and results. For the way forward, understanding the benefits of both science and business and bringing innovation to market can bring both parties closer. More science-backed initiatives like Resilient Landscapes Luxembourg are needed to ensure innovative tools that support high-level impact, ambitions, and commitments. Science must work more closely with entrepreneurs and financiers so groundbreaking research can be turned into successful business opportunities. Hence, it is my pleasure to congratulate the Resilient Landscapes team and the Luxembourg Ministry of Environment, Climate and Biodiversity. Let this collaboration spark fresh investments in the solutions and tools we and our planet need. We look forward to an inspirational event today and an exciting and impactful partnership.
The support from Dr. Éliane, Ubalijoro, and the rest of the management team at CIFOR-ICRAF for the Resilient Landscapes Luxembourg initiative has been unparalleled. This is a new strategic direction for CIFOR-ICRAF as well. We are a scientific organization that is deep-rooted in taking very evidence-based approaches in the work that we do on the ground. But what's really exciting with the incubator is that we're now working so closely with the private sector and investors as well. So as much as they're learning from us, we're also learning from them in terms of how is it that you do work with private capital to scale up nature-based solutions projects to the landscape level. So thank you once again to Éliane and the entire team. We have with us today Dr. Peter Minang as well. He's the Africa Director of CIFOR-ICRAF, and Africa as a continent is where you'll see many of CIFOR-ICRAF projects. And over to you, Peter, to give us your thoughts as well on the process so far.
Honorable Minister, distinguished guests, colleagues, friends. Thank you so much. Thank you for coming. I just wanted to start by thanking, the minister, the government of Luxembourg, and the people of Luxembourg for the support. We are very proud of this partnership, and we really look forward to, and are very glad of the commitment that you have in this, and that we are working together to deliver these global goods, for the planet. I wanted to say that this is very valuable for us, as you heard our CEO say, in terms of moving a science organization from the science that we've been doing to a different world. We've been very committed to change, and we've recognized that our science really wouldn't make a big difference if it doesn't engage, a broader partnership to bring change. So the partnership that is needed between public finance and private finance, the approach that we've seen in the field where we've done all of this great work in these different places. We have offices in 14 countries in Africa, and we work in 23 countries, actual work on the ground. We have about 312 staff across the continent, half of which are scientists, and we generate a lot of data. But we've realized that the practices that we develop, really great practices that deliver biodiversity, deliver resilience, only happens in those pockets. And we do need that change to move that to scale. And that's why this partnership is very important for us in terms of linking the work that we do with the private sector, linking that innovation that we do with a bigger set and moving that to scale. I think that we've been doing a lot of work around de-risking, but not in the way in which just in terms of capacity building and bringing knowledge, but now de-risking the financing part of it, the entrepreneurial part of it with this new initiative makes a huge change. Because without entrepreneurship, without these initiatives moving in the direction in which it's going now, we are not able to generate the public goods in the way that we expect. And I think that this partnership really brings that dimension to the fore. We can't overemphasize it. We are really committed. We have extremely good scientists that will generate the data. We have the systems working with Resilient Landscapes to sort of blow up that information and the data from these experiences to the rest of the world, so that that is taken up even by people that have not been in this initiative. And we're really, really grateful. I wouldn't want to spend too much time on the detail, because I think Nitin will take that forward with the team in terms of all of the specifics. But thank you very much. Thank you.
Peter, thank you very much for providing a more sort of grounded perspective of how is it that we do things. But I think the video that we're about to show you really does demonstrate how the Resilient Landscapes Luxembourg initiative works within CIFOR-ICRAF. We work very closely with scientists at the project level. In fact, our projects are led by CIFOR-ICRAF scientists. So let's give them an opportunity to talk about their experience of working with the Resilient Landscapes team on these projects. Cue the video, please.
So from our Sustainable Wood Fuel initiative, we were looking at how we could actually accelerate the transformation of these sectoral activities, and also how to make them economically viable. And there our collaboration with Resilient Landscapes came in. We hope to be able to upscale the production of improved cook stoves up to 60,000 cook stoves a year between now and 2026, so that almost all the households in Kisangani can purchase an improved cook stove. It will help them to reduce their consumption of charcoal by 35 to 45%. We will also involve close to 50 villages all around the biosphere reserve of Yangambi, trying to create a buffer where charcoal makers no longer will go into the forest, cut trees, but instead will be planting trees and having efficient carbonization methods to create a charcoal that will go to the city of Kisangani. It will reduce their wood use by half. So the whole value chain together and sustainable solutions will help to reduce the pressure on the forests of Yangambi landscape and also to maintain biodiversity, the high value tree species within the forests.
We have been having a very interesting partnership working with the Resilient Landscape team in identifying the best way to support the agroforestry development, but especially how do we supporting the value chain around the shea development, especially how to regenerate the shea parkland using innovative crafting technology that help improving the traditional ways of transforming and processing the shea, but the way that benefit mostly to women, which are the most important actors in this value chain. On that line, we've been working closely with the Resilient Landscape on how this is making a game changer collaboration. We are building an alliance among scientists with collaborators, private sector investors that we have now identified at different stages of the value chain to help designing, but most importantly, mobilizing resources using adding value created by the share to support the nature-based solution in Benin. This is a very good initiative that allow CIFOR-ICRAF as organization to bring out of our traditional way of doing things, bring technologies to scale by leveraging on existing private sector on board.
Resilient Landscape have been very helpful to shape the project we were anticipating to develop. So this really involves exchange in terms of knowledge and expertise, and the team have been very fruitful to put the concept note and the proposal into shape. I would say that Resilient Landscapes have been really pivotal to make this project attractive to investors. Currently, we have one a local investor, Rwandan investor, who have shown his interest. Now the conversation are going smoothly, and we hope to put this into practice in a short time. So this will really give us a good start working with investors, and also it will really attract more people to engage with science and to bridge the gap between scientists and the developmental practitioners.
The challenge that we were facing before partnering with the Resilient Landscape was being technical persons and scientific people. We do not know how to speak to private sector, so we don't speak same languages. And that is where Resilient Landscape is playing very important role to link our hardcore science with business and converting this interaction into an opportunity of investment and impact-oriented work with the communities, where communities will be benefited, and not only communities but also there will be social and environmental impact at large. It will be a new approach, not the business as usual that we do at CIFOR and ICRAF, because the investors' money will be given to some stakeholders in the medicinal and aromatic plants value chain, and they will return this investment with some interest. So it's a new way of working for us, which will have the economic impact on the local communities. Also, it will have a larger social impact and the environmental impact as well, because while working with farmers and local communities, we will be introducing nature-based solution and environment-friendly technologies. So we really look forward to work with the team of Resilient Landscape and see this model that we are planning to implement in Nepal can be a proven model to not only to use in Nepal, but in other regional and in global perspective as well.
Ladies and gentlemen, I don't think we should downplay how challenging it can be to bridge this gap between science and working with the private sector. All of the practitioners you've heard from today have invested incredible amount of social capital with communities on the ground that we're working with, and I must say that this is one of the key success factors for nature-based solutions projects. When you have technical collaborators, they should know the communities that they're working with, and each and every one of the scientists that were on the screen today have proven themselves in the field, because when it comes to mobilizing people for action, those are just the kind of relationships that you require. This is our key learning from year one of this initiative, that we have to ensure that there is this requisite social capital on the ground. What's also really emerged through this process is the level of confidence that has risen within the organization of engaging with the private sector and impact investors. As scientists, they were all used to doing desk work or being out in the field collecting data and then trying to translate that into a language that the private sector or investors would understand was extremely challenging. I wouldn't like to stand here and say that, oh, it's because of us that they now know how to speak to the private sector. They've basically learned from interacting with us how to do that. Today, I feel confident enough to put any one of these scientists in the same room as an investor to really explain from the technical side how the project would run. I think a couple of months ago or a couple of years ago, this would have been close to impossible. So I think this is a really great achievement in what we have tried to do in year one, if I'd be a bit modest. There are other real great learnings as well. It's the transference of skills as well, of, again, being able to translate science into something that is actionable from an investment standpoint. The investors that we are engaging for each and every one of these projects today are picking up a lot of jargon, a lot of scientific understanding from our scientists directly. So we do not keep the scientists away, again, from the investor engagement process. We're putting them in the same room and making sure that the investor learns from the scientist learns from the investor, and we're also there to make sure the entire process is very, very smooth. We're also getting a lot of project level insights which we wouldn't have gotten without this incubation process, because as you can imagine, as part of an incubation process, we're constantly sense checking the business dynamics of a particular project, which requires a lot of back and forth and talking and debate with our scientists and sometimes with the communities as well. And then you realize that, oh, where we thought private sector investment or impact investment capital was required is not actually required in this part of the project or the value chain, but it's required in the other part or somewhere higher up or lower down the value chain. So we're continually picking up information and insights, because RLL is an experimental project in itself, and year by year we're supposed to be improving our incubation process in itself. So we're off to a really, really promising start, and it's a humble beginning given the support that we have from Luxembourg, given that we're still learning. But there is a much broader ecosystem that needs to be built up. We're still building our network of impact investors that we want to work with, and that's a continual process. One key thing is the projects that we pick up for the incubator, they have to be of a certain level of maturity. There should be a proof of concept, for example, on the ground from which we have some data based on which we make the intelligent decision to go ahead and incubate. We came across many projects in CIFOR-ICRAF that don't have that proof of concept yet, that don't have a pilot on the ground. And we feel that there's still some separate funding that's required for that very, very early stage of project idea development. And that's hopefully, a synergy that we can strike as we move forward. But given the support we have from Luxembourg, we've got many more years of incubation based on our current model yet to go. So if you are an impact investor in nature-based solutions and you're looking for a technical organization to collaborate with and an incubator to collaborate with, to synergize with, please reach out to us, and we'd be happy to explore a collaboration with you. Without further ado, we also have Jane Feehan over here. She is the Senior Environment Advisor of the European Investment Bank, and we're really thrilled to have her sharing her perspectives on business and science and investment dynamics. Thank you, Jane.
Okay. Thank you very much, Nitin. Can you all hear me okay? Fantastic. Minister, Peter, Thomas, dear friends and colleagues, it's a real pleasure and an honor to be representing the European Investment Bank in this conversation today. And Minister, you absolutely nailed it with your opening. I wanted to make the very same point myself. I think the kinds of investments that we're talking about in this event, on this panel, the kinds of investments which are described in the video we've just watched, the kinds of investments which are targeted by the Resilient Landscapes Luxembourg initiative, this is the nexus of the three Rio conventions: the Convention to combat, to address climate change, the Convention on biological diversity, the Convention to combat desertification. Those three related but separate conventions, the spirit of Rio back in 1992. These are the kinds of investments which can deliver impacts across all three. And in this season of all three COPs taking place, as happens every 2 years, when the three coincide in this part of the year, it's so important to revisit the Earth Summit spirit and look at actually some of the most impactful projects, which can sometimes be swept aside in these wider conversations here, because many of these projects are not very capital intensive. And sometimes that ticket size can be a challenge for some of the bigger institutions here who are looking to invest millions or billions. Many of these projects are actually far more modest in terms of their investment needs. Anyway, that was how I wanted to open, and indeed you nailed it, Minister. So I wanted to say a few words about the European Investment Bank and our track record and interest in this field. And I also wanted to say a few words about the importance of science in informing decision making, and specifically investment decisions. So firstly, on the European Investment Bank, we have worked very hard over the last years to become the European Union's climate bank, the European Union's climate and environment bank. We are the bank of the European Union. The 27 shareholders of our institution are the 27 member states of the EU. We're based in Luxembourg, but Luxembourg is so much more than our host country. We also have a number of joint initiatives, which I'll mention in a moment. One of which I'll mention in a moment. We, as a climate bank, we have, in fact, committed to investing at least half of everything we do in climate action. And last year we managed to get up to 60%, so we're above that target. And we also, in 2019, took the decision to stop investing in all fossil fuels, which was a very difficult decision, but a decision which we were very proud to have made in bringing ourselves into line with the Paris Agreement. So here at COP29, at the Climate COP29, together with the other multilateral development banks, we have together, with this MDB group, we have together pledged to increase annual collective climate financing for low and middle income countries to $120 billion per year, including $42 billion specifically on adaptation, and also to mobilize at least $65 billion of investment from the private sector. Now, those numbers are all very well, but actually in terms of impacts on climate mitigation and adaptation, we need to make sure that some of that money is being channeled towards regenerative natural systems, right? Because if we think about what the science is telling us about climate change, around a third of greenhouse gases are being absorbed by terrestrial natural systems, right? So if we're not taking care of those natural systems, that absorption capacity actually is declining. And I think it keeps certain people awake at night. I find it deeply worrying to think about how the Amazon, for example, is actually tipping into being a carbon source where it used to be, a carbon sink. I mean, these are huge problems. And if we as an institution are only focusing on tech and renewable energy, we're missing that huge piece. So it's important that we and the other MDBs channel some of our investments towards these kinds of nature-based solutions, regenerative natural systems. And we fully intend to do that, and we indeed have a track record and a portfolio in that. And I just want to very quickly mention 4 examples. One is the Land Degradation Neutrality Fund, which the Luxembourgish government is also investing in with a very catalytic junior investment, which is exactly the kind of transformative investment decision which can then catalyze private sector investment, which is exactly what happened, because that fund, which has reached a total of, I believe, $208 million now, 80% of that is private sector money. And the more risky junior investment which the Luxembourgish government made has been part of the reason for that. Now, European Investment Bank is also investing in that fund, and we're very proud to see how now I believe of the 13 investments which have been made across Latin America, Africa and Asia, now 138,000 hectares of degraded land have been rehabilitated. That will be at least doubled over the lifetime of the fund. And what's happening is, these are projects which, a bit actually similar to some of the examples in the video that we just watched, these are projects which, as well as having that, soil rehabilitation or landscape rehabilitation component, they're also producing agricultural commodities, certified timber. These are agroforestry systems, sustainable forestry systems. They're producing cocoa, coffee, hazelnuts, cosmetic products. So these are financially viable projects in which the fund is investing. And that's a really crucial point. This can work. These kinds of investments can be financially viable as well as delivering all of the impacts that we've been talking about. So that's one example in which we are investing, and also Luxembourg. A second example is one which I'm proud to say I had a role in myself in its early stages in opening the conversation with the government of La Côte d'Ivoire, where I lived until last year. Representing the European Investment Bank there. We are accompanying the government of Ivory Coast in helping to finance their ambitious program of forest rehabilitation with a 150 million loan that's being signed at the moment. And that loan will help the government of Côte d'Ivoire to finance in the first phase 180,000 hectares of forest rehabilitation. And this is in a country which is a very predominantly agricultural economy, and where as the #1 cocoa producer in the world, the #1 cashew producer in the world, a huge producer of many other global commodities, forests have been lost as those parts of the economy have grown. And now the government wants to focus on what is left and rehabilitate and increase the forest area once again. So we're very happy to accompany that. Further north in Morocco, we this year signed a €100 million loan to work with help the government of Morocco to tackle erosion and to rehabilitate natural parks in the country. these investments have a strong focus on preserving soil fertility. And the fourth and final example I wanted to mention is back home in Luxembourg, where we were delighted under our natural capital financing facility, which is a dedicated envelope that we had to pilot these kinds of projects. We extended a €9 million loan to the government of Luxembourg to restore part of the Alzette watershed and part of the Petrus watershed. And here, this is a nature-based solution, kind of classic example, right? Where the restoration of a more natural floodplain further upstream from urban areas can have a very real and measurable impact on flood events further down in more kind of developed urban areas. So that's exactly what the Luxembourgish authorities are doing. And actually here, science, right? You know, the authorities are looking back on the old maps from the 1700s of the drainage works that were done during the Habsburg times to see actually where was the original watershed, the floodplain area, right, and to map that out. And then to I'm not saying that we should make these decisions based on what happened in the past, because justement, we're going to go the wrong direction if we do that, because the future, as we know, will not be as the past was because of climate change. So you're integrating that historical knowledge with climate modeling of future flood risk in those zones, then deciding strategically where can the Alzette be allowed to flood, you know, during those periods of the year in order to reduce the flooding risk downstream. So this is the kind of project which I think can inspire many other countries and regions. So anyway, yes, those are the project examples I wanted to mention. So on science, I mean, just a brief personal word. You know, I'm a biologist and a forestry engineer, and I work in a bank. So this whole you know, theme of
it's a rare thing.
How to have those conversations is something I can relate to, and how important it is indeed that especially, you know, institutions with a public mandate. I mean, you know, Peter, you talked about public goods. In the multilateral development banks, you know, we're public institutions. We have to make sure to be taking science into account in making decisions which are not just financially viable. So, you know, you've got your internal rate of return, which is satisfactory. You also need your economic rate of return to be greater. And this is one of the problems with the kinds of projects we've just been talking about, is often it's really hard to count that. How do you measure the economic rate of it? We know it's financially viable, and there are these other impacts, but actually, how do we quantify those other impacts? So that's very important. And there is a really great work stream going on now. We in EIB are involved in this, and there are lots of other financial institutions, not just MDBs, but commercial banks looking at this as well. It's actually, how can I assess the quality of my balance sheet in that sense? I know that many of these businesses that I'm investing in rely on ecosystem services in one way or another. I'm investing in agricultural businesses, for example, where some of their commodities are pollinated by wild pollinators. So if that ecosystem service declines due to loss of habitat, due to climate change, it's going to impact their margins. And that in turn is going to affect the quality of my balance sheet. How can I assess that risk? And we're working on that. Other institutions are working on that to get better at the risk assessment side. But that's the risk side. We're talking about the opportunities side here, mainly on this panel. But there is also the risk side. Getting better at counting the you know, these aspects of ecosystem services. So we're working on that. So in conclusion, science is a de-risker, and more than that, it is the foundation of impactful projects and understanding the impacts that these projects need to have. And so let me just close by congratulating the Resilient Landscapes Luxembourg initiative and wishing it all the best in the future. And we look forward to continuing the conversation on EIB's potential role therein. Thank you so much.
I am so glad that we had you on the panel today, Jane, because you did this wonderful job of demystifying science. I think we use that a lot in saying, oh, we use science to de-risk projects, but what exactly does that mean? And not just relying on history or what happened in a landscape prior, because that could have led to several issues as well. But really understanding how is it that we go forward? What are the projections based on the data specific to that landscape that should inform the nature-based solutions intervention that we want to introduce? It's a very evidence-based approach of working. And I think that's what we mean by taking a science-based approach. So thank you so much for doing that. I also feel like we're kindred spirits, because I was that rare biologist in the bank as well. And saying a lot of strange things related to ecosystem services, and everybody was like, what are you talking about? How does this impact the balance sheet of the project? Yeah. So I'm so glad to see that we're joining forces and the like-minded are aligning on this. The point that you make on ecosystem services and monetizing other ecosystem assets and flows, etc. This is the evolution of what we're trying to do. We must go beyond carbon, which is where we somehow feel like we get stuck at when we talk about monetizing ecosystem services. And for that, I think there, again, needs to be a lot of meeting of minds, but there needs to be an application of that valuation on actual projects. And to bring those projects out and to work again with the financial sector to make sure that these projects ultimately do get financed as well. Like there's a recognition of ecosystem services. So thank you very much for raising those points. I think we have space for some questions for the panel. So I guess it's over to the audience, and please don't put me in a position where I have to pick on someone who really doesn't want to ask a question. Huh? Does anyone? You do have questions. 1 second.
Hello? Hi. Thank you everyone for a really useful set of remarks. I wondered if I could direct a question to you, Jane. And thinking about the loan you described to Côte d'Ivoire and also to Luxembourg, I wondered if you could expand on how the case was made from a government point of view of taking on that debt in order to make those, to restore those forests or restore that floodplain. Was it based on a quantification of the cost savings from reduced flood risk in Luxembourg, or what was the, so for that government to then take that loan and justify the debt to do it, what was the financial case to those institutions?
Thank you for the question. You didn't introduce yourself. Sorry, what's your first name? Didn't hear. We'll just, I'll go ahead anyway, sir. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you for the question. I certainly wouldn't presume to talk about the Luxembourg case in the presence of in current company. But I would just say that any calculation of the potential damages from flood risk would far outweigh the investment decision on the works that needed to allow the river to flood in the way that I was doing. So I won't comment further on that case. It's like avoided damages are an adequate justification for these investment decisions in many similar cases. But on the Côte d'Ivoire, on the Ivory Coast example, there the justification would have been primarily based on the country's obligations under the three conventions we were just describing. Côte d'Ivoire has obligations to take care of its forests, the commitments that the government has made over years, and so that these activities are helping the government to make good on those international commitments to rehabilitate and restore their forests. So there was that sort of policy driver. And there was also another driver which is very hard to put a number on, but there is a growing awareness in that region, and you'll see this in other regions of the world as well, but in that region there's a growing awareness that huge loss of forests in the Gulf of Guinea area is having a very big impact on the hydrological cycle of the region, and this is in some areas this has been quite kind of well studied, and in other areas not. But like the predictability of rainfall has changed so much in the last years, and that can really be, linked in a very real way to massive loss of forest cover at a regional level. And there's growing awareness of that in Ivory Coast and in the countries around. And although that hasn't actually been translated into a financial quantum, there is growing awareness of that at scientific level. So I think those two reasons would be the ones I would point to. Thank you.
I think Peter wanted to add a couple of more points on that.
I mean, I haven't looked at the paperwork, of course, but if I were the government of Cote d'Ivoire, I'll take that loan and invest for one simple reason. In the areas we did a lot of work. We are the leading institution now in terms of fighting the cocoa swollen shoot disease. If you know it, it's a disease that affected cocoa in Cote d'Ivoire over the last 5-6 years, and it decimated almost 75% of all cocoa production. So there was a period when it was very short. And the government of Cote d'Ivoire depends, 14% of GDP is directly and indirectly connected to cocoa. We found out in the pilots that we did and in the sort of sampling that we did and all the analysis that cocoa in closely forested landscapes survived much better than cocoa in open, deforested landscapes. Just from that perspective, I'll be investing my money into rehabilitating forests, because cocoa in the forested agroecologies did much better in terms of surviving the cocoa swollen shoot disease than the other.
Thanks, Peter, for providing that extra perspective on that issue. Do we have any other questions at all? Do we have questions online by any chance? Joyce and team? None? I've got one here.
I'm going to try and hold. Yes, that's working. Hi, my name is David, and I'm going to wear a Conservation International hat when I ask this question. I have a few different hats here. I'm curious, there was a lot of talk about investment, and I'm curious if the panel has any particular views on investing in these type of landscape restoration projects to enable further private sector funding via things like voluntary carbon markets or Article 6 or those kind of credits in general.
I think you want to take a stab at this? But maybe I can start from the Resilient Landscapes Luxembourg perspective and then hand it over to Jane as well. It's not a prerequisite for the projects to have carbon components, the projects in our incubator. If carbon is required to make a project viable, or just to push it over the edge to get impact investors interested, because other financial dynamics of the project aren't so well baked, then that's something that we will consider and develop. We've decided to take a very cautious approach generally towards carbon in any of our projects to make sure that there is compliance with generally what's happening, whether it's under Article 6 or other considerations that we need to take into consideration. We do not want to get into the business of carbon carboying. And with the guidance of Luxembourg as well, and with their support and their again, I think guidance from a carbon standpoint, we generally do take a very cautious approach. Not to say that we would not include or consider carbon components to the projects, but we would prefer if they could stand on their own feet. So, say for example, the Schure project that we were talking about earlier. Schure has huge market value. And if there's a way that we can make it more sustainable and increase the volume, that in itself is a great financial story to tell. And there's potentially no need then in that case for a carbon component in that sense. I'm not trying to downplay the complications of that project, and perhaps we could include carbon, but that isn't the primary sort of step that we would take from a financial structuring standpoint. I hope that somewhat answers your question. Jane, did you want to add anything on top of that? No?
thanks, Nitin, and thank you, David, for the question. Actually, Nitin, you summed up our approach in the European Investment Bank. Yeah, we have quite a few examples of projects where we have invested, and one of the revenue streams is sale of carbon credits. But it's our approach would be, as you described, Nitin, it's great when it's one of several revenue streams. And indeed, it can be an important component of financial viability. But investing in projects where the only revenue is carbon credits, that can lead to ups and downs with the market, which can be problematic for some projects. Just on biodiversity credits, I mean, we looking forward, we're quite interested to see how the stacking of different credits in certain projects can be an interesting way forward. And following the discussions in Cali. Finally, I get the tip. Thank you, Thomas. Following the discussions at COP16, CBD COP16 in Cali a few weeks ago on high integrity biodiversity credits and this new framework, right, for ensuring that biodiversity credits or a kind of emerging system there can really make sense from the conservation perspective. There, I think we can look ahead to the future to see more investments in biodiversity credits in a way which really delivers impacts for biodiversity. And let's see how that takes shape. You know, we may have some projects which are kind of stacking these different credit types to bring in more resources to run great projects. And that's something we're quite excited to see in the future. Thank you.
Maybe I can just profit to jump in. I haven't been so vocal so far, but just maybe as DG from the Ministry in Luxembourg, also the sort of national perspective on this. So very interested in the discussion, and you mentioned Article 6. It's something that is moving at this COP, and it's something that has to move, and that might be one of the sort of positive outcomes, that this very, very messy and technical question of how to sort of frame a global market where there's a lot of actors that are very eager to cash in, and so for Luxembourg it's a liability, and it's very important that we change it into an opportunity. And so we have to be ready for that. So there's been multiple attempts also for us. We were looking into it, and then we come to the conclusion it's maybe not ready yet, because if we start something like this and then it goes wrong, we can actually mess up something that we've been doing for 10 years because of one project that went haywire. And so it's very important for us to be solid about how we account for these carbon credits. But it's so important for the scaling discussion on how we really can move, into sort of larger footprint of the sort of nature positive results that we see. So we need this credit discussion, biodiversity credits. We need also the debt swap discussion. So these things, we're open to it, but it's a question of maturing the approaches. And maybe this incubator and what we talk about today is not for Luxembourg the right place to do that. So we have other initiatives where we can triangulate and mitigate those risks and make maybe the first steps in direction of swaps and credits. Just to mention, for instance, our Global Trust Fund with the GGGI is something where we make our first experiences there. But here it's very important that we get that sort of viability right at the level that we're at here with RLL.
Thank you for really elucidating that point from Luxembourg's side. And just a point of clarity as well for our incubator. Maybe it's a case of just the themes of the projects that we've chosen for year one. Most of them, none of them, in fact, have like a hardcore conservation aspect to them. And I think it's when conservation comes in and there's no other revenue stream per se that you can get from the landscape. I think that's when you really need to look hard at the carbon question, at the biodiversity credits question, and then stacking the credits. And I think we're keeping a keen eye on how the biodiversity credits conversation is going. And as a scientific organization, we just want to make sure that we're following standards and methodologies to make sure that what we're putting out there is of high quality. And that's still an evolving discussion in the biodiversity space. But we've got our eyes and ears open. And and I think the stacking of credits is just a really good way of kind of visualizing the way that we would be looking at projects as we're going forward. So thanks. I hope that answered your question. Yeah. I think we have space for one more question if there's anything that's arising. We do. Hold on.
Hello, I'm Nirmal. I represent Climate Partner Impact. It's a German company on carbon. My question here is how long-term is the financing in the sense that we are looking at developing soil, water, land, forests, and it's not going to be so easy to look at a certain problem. There are continuous recurring problems that keep coming through all through the life cycle. So I didn't get a sense of the maintenance of the projects. It's a longer term commitment. How long term are you in that sense? And the second question is, of course, it came through from the carbon perspective, is that we know that from a carbon is not the best way to kind of monitor the projects, or currently we are still having issues in quality of the projects and how it is getting implemented. But nevertheless, at least some mechanism to monitor how it is progressing, and is there something in the interim that we need to do, something that requires refinancing perhaps, I don't know. And because things keep falling apart, it has to be rebuilt again. So both these questions are a little interconnected, and say quality is going to be a critical factor because you just started the incubation in that sense that you are designing projects. At that point of time in the carbon market, we do it very well on the design part. But the moment it moves into the 4th, 5th and the 10th, 20th year, this is where the things started to happen in a different way. And this is where this monitoring really comes to shapes that, yeah, can we reinvest money again to do something which is really coming apart? And trees dry, soil also erosion happens, and all those things are really affecting the quality of the projects that you already see in the carbon market about how these are being handled. So these two on the quality aspects and the long-term engagement, let's call it, I don't know what is the duration, but at least the longer-term engagement, how committed you are into handling this space, and then what kind of monitoring systems you're likely to have so that you are sure the incubation that is coming through is also fulfilled all through with the science approach. So it's a little complex. It's not an easy answer, but it's a complex question either, because this is what's really happening at this point of time.
Maybe I can give it a first try from Luxembourg's perspective, but I'm sure that CIFOR-ICRAF or Resilient Landscapes wants to jump in as well. I hear where you're going with this question. From the long-term engagement point of view, I think Luxembourg is very clear that we are engaged with Resilient Landscapes for as long as it needs to get the job done in pipelining viable projects so they can survive on their own. And I think that's the point. In our philosophy, there's sort of like an old way of doing it. Also, where Global North, a term that we actually don't like so much, but let's say developed countries provide money, they provide grants, and then once that money dries up, then things fall to the ground, and it's sort of like a old, also in the not so nice way that you can think old ways of doing things, also from colonial times, etc. So I don't want to get into that discussion, but just in general, what we are trying to find and learn about is innovative finance and how we can seed processes where there is let's say a dynamic that is being launched locally in the communities that has its own viability and that generates new ideas in order to sustain itself. And that's the sort of proof of concept. That's the mark where we know we hit it right, when we don't have to sort of inject again and again in the same context. But if it needs some reinforcement, so that's also the long-term engagement. We're not just saying, well, look, if you don't get it right the first time, we're off. But that's why we are supporting CIFOR-ICRAF and Resilient Landscapes over a long period of time. Right now, it's a number of years, and then, always with openness to learn and then implement improvements. So that's what we can say. Maybe you want to pick up on more the qualitative or Nitin?
Peter, would you like to make a comment?
Just to give you an example, in Yangambi, where they talk about the cook stoves, we've been in Yangambi landscapes for 27 years. Continuous work, and we are not going anywhere at any point. So that's to tell you the commitment that we have in these places where we work. Now, I think what Thomas was mentioning was the need. What the Luxembourg financing is bringing now is really catalyzing, is very catalytic in terms of what Nitin said about us identifying things that are mature enough, right? So that funding catalyzes a process of private sector and that enables that pathway to go on its own in a more sustainable way. So I think that is a very clear pathway that in the design of the projects. But in terms of quality, we as a science institution in the landscapes where we work, like in Yangambi, we've got huge monitoring across various disciplines. Forest, forest parameters, agroecological parameters, soil parameters, ecosystem services parameters. So we've maintained a huge database on all of our landscapes. I mean, we do sampling on 10 by 10 kilometer plots, very detailed on several agroecological parameters and socio-economical parameters. So we do look seriously at the quality in many of the places that we work. And that's the commitment. I think that's the value we bring into this as well in terms of the science, the data, and the monitoring. And most importantly, all of our data become global public goods. We don't necessarily keep it to ourselves.
Wow, Peter, thank you so much. And I think all I can really do is summarize what has been said on the panel. Social capital, very, very important. The financing, or I would say the funding rather, that Luxembourg provides allows us to deepen the connections with communities on the ground and giving them the capacity development and technical assistance that they need for the project to run with or without our intervention as a scientific organization. Despite that, as Peter said, we have a presence in all of the countries where our projects are, more specifically in the actual geography where the project is, where we've been building that social capital for a very long time. So in terms of the longevity of the project, we have to depend on communities and empower communities to be able to be good stewards of the project and monitor the project as well over time, taking that very grounded approach rather than just relying on geospatial data, which is another layer of monitoring that we are very well equipped to do as a scientific organization. And, it comes down to the quality aspect of it. The reason why projects are falling apart, again, it's because they weren't taking perhaps an evidence-based approach in planning the project to begin with. And what I really like about, and thank you for reminding me, Peter, all the data and science that CIFOR-ICRAF has produced are public goods. They're available. They can be accessed by other project developers as well. We've got the biggest soils database for Africa. We've got gene data as well for seeds. In all our projects, we try to set up infrastructure as well, like nurseries, seed banks, etc., so that the project can continue and there can be a continuous evolution as well of the seed genetics as well that are suited for that particular project. We have to choose the right trees for the right geography as well. We can't just go plant any tree in the middle of nowhere and expect it to survive. And this, again, goes back to the approach, this fundamental science-based approach that we do take, and it's something that we do pride ourselves on. Thank you again for your question. I think it's a continuous discussion again that we can have on this. But yeah, thank you all very much for your kind attention. I'll now invite Thomas Schuss, who you've already heard from. He is the Director General of the Ministry of Environment, Climate and Biodiversity of the Government of Luxembourg, to close the session for today. So over to you, Thomas.
Thank you, Nitin. I won't be long. I see Jane moving, so I want to thank Jane for her words and just for
thank you, Jane.
the EIB for being here, which is very dear to us. And then I won't be long. Maybe just to wrap it up, it's been a super interesting discussion, also hearing Peter and Nitin, and thanks to the audience for that valuable input. My minister always says we're a small country, but we're a small power. So we want to wield our influence smartly. We know that our territory is micro, but our influence can be big, and small countries can really do a difference, make a difference in this context, and especially by learning fast and thinking long and hard about how to invest our money. And so the ambition level that my minister has been able to generate now, also 1 year in office with an additional 100 million euros that are coming now for the next period. So we know we can go forward. And so the most important for us is to learn. And this is what I love about this collaboration on Resilient Landscapes Luxembourg. It is a learning process for everybody. And something that we've learned, for instance, is when we say, okay, we're going to help to close the financing gap. Well, the finance gap is actually two things. It's investors, so mainstreaming investment into nature-positive solutions, nature-based solutions, but it's also the pipeline, so the opportunity gap. It's really making sure that there's enough projects that are coming, because bankability is something, if you listen to the wrong people, they will tell you, well, they can get money out of everything. And that's how we've been working for so many generations and so many years. And what we need CIFOR-ICRAF for is to have that scientific voice saying, because what we want to be about as Luxembourg is we cannot go wrong about what is sustainable, what is nature positive, what is a nature-based solution in the long term. We cannot take shortcuts. We cannot make the wrong turns in this. And so we need that scientific voice that is also being listened to by private investors. So it's about language and about creating a discussion space where these people try to, or start trusting each other. The bankers, the investors, they realize we have to find that sweet spot between that scientific solidity and the bankability. And that's the only way forward. And so if we can help with that, and that's what I think what we do, what we've heard with these projects, at the moment it's still sort of small is beautiful. We realize, okay, we've been working, you mentioned the time that it sometimes takes to really get that viable economic interest into a project and to have that sort of sustainable bankability, but it's possible, and to continue doing that, and so we will be behind it for as long as it takes. And if we can, and just to mention, there's also a discussion space that is needed around that in order to attract the investors and in order to attract possible partners in this. So we will now, over the next years, really try to increase also, let's say, the visibility of this story. And so if we can help with whatever works and seeing that it does work, and then finding the right, let's say, avenues to scale up. Because just to mention, Jane mentioned the Land Degradation Natural Neutrality Fund. So that actually came about in the Global Landscapes Forum, which is the discussion space that we created, that Luxembourg also created with CIFOR-ICRAF. It's another work stream that we have with you guys. And so it's not the incubator, but it's sort of like a big event. We will do the next big event in Belém at the COP30 in Belém, where we will have ministers on board and try to really have that pragmatic approach there of showing what works and then seeing, okay, how can we scale this up? The Land Degradation Neutrality Fund then came, okay, we need second replenishment, we need to continue the fund now over the next years. And so the discussion came on how to do this. And we were very attentive to detail on, because then you come into monocultures, you come into plantations, you come into all kinds of discussions in order to monetize on a larger scale, which raise questions about, scientific questions about the viability. And I think that's the exercise that we have to continue doing, is finding the sweet spot. And the sweet spot is messy to find. It's like in any good relationship, we know it from our private lives. It is sort of a messy business, but you have the engagement and the hope that you can maintain it and keep it. And that's where we need to continue. And so we're very, very happy about this project, and thank you to all of you guys. We appreciate it highly. And thank you for listening.
Yeah, thank you all for your kind attention and attending. We're open to take questions. Please reach out to us as well. You can reach out to us through our website, Resilient Landscapes Luxembourg, or social media. But yeah, thank you to the panelists, and please enjoy the rest of what's left of COP. Come on, full energy, 2 days to go. And yeah, thank you. Bye.